everyone and welcome to Smart World with CNBC. Bonjour à tous et bienvenue dans Smart World avec CNBC. Je suis ravie de vous retrouver pour ce format 100% hybride. At the top of this program, première demande d'autorisation d'urgence pour Pfizer. La FDA aura le dernier mot sur la fiabilité du vaccin, mais le gouvernement américain compte d'ores et déjà vacciner une partie de la population en décembre. De nouvelles restrictions dans plusieurs États américains. La barre des 12 millions de cas franchis sur l'ensemble du territoire. 1 million de nouvelles infections a été enregistré en moins d'une semaine. Comment interpréter les nouvelles participations de Warren Buffett dans le secteur de la santé? On décryptera le pari de Berkshire Hathaway avec les analystes de CNBC. Welcome to Smart World with CNBC. C'est parti, let's go! Pfizer and BioNTech déposent une première demande d'autorisation d'urgence aux États-Unis pour leur vaccin. Il appartiendra ensuite à la Food and Drug Administration de décider si le vaccin peut être déployé en toute sécurité. Pfizer applies for emergency use authorization for its vaccine.
The milestone today kicks off a race for the FDA to review thousands of pages of data, all before its outside vaccine experts weigh in. The FDA could make its decision soon after that. Operation Warp Speed Chief Advisor Dr. Moncef Slaoui says then a whole new race begins.
As soon as the EUA is approved, within 24 hours, the vaccines will be in the immunization sites and people will be immunized.
This one is overseen by Pfizer's Tanya Alcorn.
Our mantra has been no dose left behind.
It'll be a massive feat of logistics, not just because of how many need the vaccine, but because it has to be stored and shipped at ultra-cold temperatures, minus 70 degrees Celsius or 94 below zero Fahrenheit. She says she's confident.
This is what we do every day for hundreds of products in hundreds of countries. So yes, minus 70 is a more unique temperature, but for us, the science is the same.
Pfizer's designed special thermal shipping boxes about the size of a carry-on suitcase. Each fits 5,000 doses nestled in dry ice to stay perfectly frozen. And the precious cargo is shipped with continuous temperature monitoring and GPS trackers.
So we'll have eyes, digital eyes on them all the time.
Once they get to pharmacies or doctor's offices where they'll be used, they can be stored in ultra-cold freezers, kept in their shippers for 15 days with replenished dry ice, or stored in the fridge for 5 days. And Shep, Pfizer has partnered with FedEx and UPS to ship the vaccines, which could start happening in mid-December. So a whole new kind of holiday package. Shep.
Indeed, Meg. Thanks. Here's the thing, though. The vaccine has to get from the place where it's made to the places where it's distributed to the places where it's administered. And the people who want to get vaccinated have to get to the administer. So if COVID is running rampant, unchecked, uncontrolled across the nation, can all of that happen as planned? Back to Dr. Jha, how concerned are you, and could you spell out why, Doctor?
Yeah, so Shep, I am concerned, and it's of course it's going to be right in the middle of the transition that's happening at the federal government. That's not going very well right now. So there's a lot of complexity here that needs to happen. One of the reasons I am concerned is if COVID spikes are really happening in many places in the country, doctors' offices are going to be virtual. They're not going to be open for visits. We're not going to want to see crowding in pharmacies. Remember, in the middle of a bad pandemic, everything is much, much harder, and we're going to want to get these vaccines out. So I think that is one set of logistical issues that I'm really worried about. Obviously, in the beginning, we're going to also want to get first responders and healthcare workers. That may be more possible through hospitals, but until we get this pandemic under control, everything is going to be slower and harder with getting the vaccine out.
On ne sait pas encore combien de temps la FDA prendra pour étudier les données. Le gouvernement américain prévoit, lui, de mettre en place une campagne de vaccins dans la première quinzaine de décembre. Alors qu'un vaccin serait normalement accessible à tous sous un gouvernement Biden, les tests et les traitements restent encore extrêmement chers pour la majeure partie de la population américaine. Les zones les plus pauvres et les plus rurales des États-Unis sont les plus durement touchées. Let's watch the CNBC report on the towns hardest hit by coronavirus.
Take my home state of Mississippi, for example. African Americans there make up a little more than a third of the total population. But according to the COVID Tracking Project, blacks account for nearly half of all COVID deaths in Mississippi. CNBC's Dan Lieberman spoke with people in the Mississippi Delta about the crisis they're facing in one of the poorest states, poorest region.
To live in a poor county that may not have the resources of a larger county or in the capital city, I definitely think it's an injustice to our patients.
Nurse practitioner Keela Brown-Jones lives in Jackson, Mississippi, but she knows it's here in rural counties where she's needed the most.
Some of the poorest individuals in Mississippi live in the Mississippi Delta. Many times our patients do not have the money to pay individuals to bring them to their doctor's appointments or to take them to be tested.
That's why her mobile clinic team travels 2 to 3 times a week to areas experiencing spikes in COVID cases. Since March, they've tested more than 3,000 people. For Lorene Stokes and her husband JC, coming to get tested this week feels especially important.
Just buried our brother last Saturday, and now we're getting ready for our niece services. And our great niece is in Louisiana right now because there was no ICU beds available.
In Mississippi, only about 100 ICU beds out of 881 are available. In many rural areas, there are no ICU beds at all. Getting to one can take hours.
That delay could be the difference between life and death.
But the problem with accessing care starts long before someone ends up in the ICU. More than 60% of families in Holmes County do not have broadband internet at home. Just signing up for a COVID test requires a trip to the library, where free Wi-Fi is available until midnight. As cases here continue to rise, Holmes County local leaders say more resources need to flow into their community. District Supervisors Leroy Johnson and Alfonso Greer say they're fed up.
We're the poorest county in the country. So if the poorest county in the country can't get no help, what does that mean for the rest of the nation? It is immoral, but it's evil in a certain way to treat poor people like we're discarded folk, right? I'm tired of being a discarded group, right? I'm tired of being a disposable unit.
Les Noirs et les Hispaniques aux États-Unis meurent toujours de manière disproportionnée de la Covid-19. Selon le Center for Disease Control, les Noirs aux États-Unis étaient 2,1 fois plus susceptibles de mourir de la Covid que les Blancs. Les Hispaniques étaient 1,1 fois plus susceptibles de mourir du virus. Et jeudi dernier, les États-Unis ont franchi un seuil tragique avec plus de 250 000 vies américaines perdues depuis le début de la pandémie. Pour contenir le virus, certains États ont décidé d'imposer de nouvelles restrictions comme des confinements partiels ou encore un couvre-feu. Several US states impose sweeping new restrictions as coronavirus cases surge.
This stuff is real serious. This is no joke.
The goal is to both heal Texans as well as to ease the burden on hospitals in Lubbock and elsewhere in just the coming weeks. They are being distributed to all regions in the state of Texas as we speak. There are allocations that are made. The first allocation that is made is by the federal government about which states are going to be receiving the drug. Texas ranked at number 2 among the states receiving the drug. The one that ranked number 1 was Illinois. They got just a few more than Texas did based upon the first 2 allocations. And then Texas allocates it around the state of Texas based upon what the hospital needs are in those particular regions. Our most immediate goal is to reduce the lack of capacity at hospitals, and as a result, Lubbock, the Amarillo area, the Midland area, the El Paso area, all fall within the zones that we are working to focus on to make sure that they will be receiving as much as possible.
All the members of our team are already tired. We've got folks who are just exhausted, and we will always rise up to be able to take care of folks as a team, and we will always figure out a way to get it done. But it would be a lot easier if we could take a break. And we will never take a break in the middle of a pandemic.
This thing's getting out of control. So, stay home this year.
Decisions that we make now will have huge repercussions on the health, well-being of our neighbors, of our healthcare providers, of our daycare providers, of our teachers, and so many of our neighbors. We now know that more than a third of the folks who are getting infected are coming from sources they don't know. That's very, very dangerous, because if we can't test and if we can't isolate, the spread exponentially grows.
Selon une analyse CNBC des données de Johns Hopkins, la moyenne nationale sur 7 jours des nouvelles infections quotidiennes s'élève maintenant à plus de 161 000 cas. C'est donc 26% de plus qu'il y a une semaine. Le gigantesque marché de la santé attire encore plus les investisseurs depuis le déclenchement de la crise sanitaire. Rappelez-vous, le conglomérat de Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway, avait investi 5,7 milliards de dollars d'actions dans 4 sociétés pharmaceutiques américaines la semaine dernière. Let's analyze why Berkshire Healthcare stocks buys don't necessarily mean Warren Buffett is bullish on the sector.
If he buys big drug makers like Pfizer, Merck, AbbVie, and Bristol-Myers, that's a statement in and of itself about what he thinks about healthcare as a group. Don't you think?
It may not be. No, because I'll tell you why. With every passing quarter, Combs and Wexler get more of the portfolio to allocate for themselves. And we could disagree whether or not the old man gets the call on positions over $1 billion or whatever. I don't know. Who really knows? But he has given more autonomy to his investment consigliaries than they had last year and the year before that and the year before that. And why has he done that? Because they have invested in things that were way beyond the realm of Charlie and Warren, and they have done a spectacular job positioning Berkshire in things like MasterCard, Visa, technology companies. They're in Amazon now. These are trades that the old man would never have pulled the trigger on. So he may have approved them, he may not have, but they're not his. And I don't think all of a sudden Warren Buffett is perusing the clinical trial information from Pfizer and AbbVie about drugs that they have in development and saying, yeah, now's the time, let's get more Pfizer. I don't think they're his trades. I really don't.
Ces 4 nouveaux achats d'actions de Berkshire Hathaway doublent quasiment la taille des investissements du conglomérat dans les actions liées à la santé, 9,3 milliards de dollars au total. Et toujours sur les marchés, le Bitcoin semble inarrêtable. Bitcoin surge continues as the cryptocurrency nears 19K.
Welcome back to Fast Money. We've got a Bitcoin alert, the cryptocurrency making big gains this week, up nearly 15%. And listen to what BlackRock Chief Investment Officer Rick Rieder said about Bitcoin earlier today on CNBC.
And I think cryptocurrency is here to stay. And I think it is a durable, and you've seen the central banks that have talked about digital currencies. I think digital currency and the receptivity, particularly millennials' receptivity of technology and cryptocurrency is real. Digital payment systems is real. So I think Bitcoin is here to stay. Do I think it's a durable mechanism that do I think will take the place of gold to a large extent? Yeah, I do, because it's so much more functional than passing a bar of gold around.
Wow. So BlackRock is saying Bitcoin could replace gold one day. BK, I feel like if Rick Rieder tuned into Fast Money circa 3 years ago, he might have heard the same argument from you.
Yes, I think he would have. And, it's nice to see somebody like Rick being able to say that, because I'm sure he's done his research on this, and it really reflects the mindset, the change in mindset that institutional investors have had now versus 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, I talked to institutional investors and they say, hey, BK, I can't invest in this. My risk management team won't even let me touch it. Now you have institutional investors saying, hey, wait, I got to buy this thing. I got to be in it. And that's what we're seeing in the market. And that's being reflected in the price. And what's kind of interesting, what we're seeing is there is, in the relatively short term, a bit of a coin shortage. So you're seeing institutions, high net worth individuals buying coins, taking them off exchange, putting them in cold storage, and they have a 5 or a 10-year view on these, and that creates a lack of supply. So that's what's been driving the price. The final thing I would just say, though, is that you have to have a long-term view on this. We did a piece on the show back in 2016. Bitcoin was at $899, and we asked the question, is it too late to buy Bitcoin? And of course, the answer now is no, it wasn't, right? But remember, Bitcoin went from 1,200 down to 700 before it came all the way back up here. So, point is, if you're gonna buy Bitcoin, understand it's incredibly volatile and have a long-term view.
La valeur d'un bitcoin a plus que doublé en 2020. Le bitcoin dépasse cette semaine une nouvelle barre symbolique, celle des $19 000. Les gains ont été particulièrement spectaculaires ces dernières semaines, le bitcoin ayant augmenté de 40% depuis début octobre. Et ces derniers jours, plusieurs introductions en bourse étaient attendues. DoorDash, l'entreprise de livraison de nourriture, était valorisée à $16 milliards lors de son dernier tour de table. L'entreprise fait partie d'un groupe comprenant Airbnb, Roblox et Wish, qui envisage aussi d'entrer à Wall Street avant la fin de l'année. Here's what you might have missed this week.
Just in the last 7 days, we've seen IPO prospectuses for DoorDash, Airbnb, Affirm, Roblox, and Wish, among several lesser-known names. The rush of deals is due to the sweet spot in the calendar right after the election, right before Thanksgiving. By disclosing an S1 this week, these IPOs are on track to market to investors and debut before the Christmas holiday. But in addition to their timing, by and large, these deals have another thing in common. Their filings contain lines like this one found in Roblox's last night, quote, "An increase in activity on our platform is a result of shelter-in-place policies instituted in response to the COVID-19 pandemic." They note that they don't expect these activity levels to be sustained. For DoorDash, more people have obviously been ordering food delivery. For Airbnb, more people are renting homes to get space and fresh air. For Affirm, more people are financing things like exercise equipment and home office furniture. For Roblox, more kids are spending their time with online gaming. For Wish, people are shopping online. The question for investors, though, is what happens to these businesses if, and assuming when, the world goes back.
Les conseillers en introduction en bourse s'attendent à voir un volume record d'activité entre la période de Thanksgiving aux États-Unis et les vacances de Noël. Les entreprises qui ont échappé au chaos du marché au début de la pandémie se précipitent maintenant pour franchir les portes du marché boursier. Certaines sociétés attendaient également le résultat des élections américaines avant de passer à l'action. Et une autre entreprise continue son ascension. Le géant de la tech, Apple, avait promis plusieurs mises à jour avec ses propres puces internes. Et les bonnes surprises sont au rendez-vous. Les utilisateurs sont sous le charme. Here's why Macs are moving to ARM chips and what the reviewers are saying about Apple's first computers with its own.
Apple made waves when it announced it would ditch the Intel processors it used in its computers for the better part of 14 years and replace them with its own in-house chips the company developed behind closed doors. This wasn't much of a shock. Intel's chip development had been languishing for years, and Apple had been long rumored to kick Intel to the curb in favor of its own hardware. But what really got people talking was Apple's assurances that the move would provide the golden ratio of upgrades: greater performance, greater efficiency, and much, much greater battery life. But even loyalists weren't sure that Apple could live up to its own hype. So fast forward to this week when reviewers finally got their hands on the new Macs with the M1 processor, and the consensus seems to be that, yeah, these new chips are pretty amazing.
I don't know if I've ever been in love with a laptop, but I think I'm in love with these laptops. Here we have laptops that considerably change what we've known about laptops.
This is really like having your cake, eating it too, and being able to share it with your friends in terms of there is no trade-off.
Our own tech products editor Todd Hazelton said Apple's move was smart. This move for Apple has a number of benefits. It gives them a greater control over development of their own computers. They don't have to wait for Intel to catch up with the latest features that Apple wants to add to its Macs. They can make thinner, lighter machines that run cooler, and they can even get rid of fans in certain computers altogether like they did in the MacBook Air. And Apple can optimize its Mac OS software to run even better on its own hardware, much like it does with iOS and its in-house chips on the iPhone. But there are also some challenges for Apple too. For context, it isn't the first time that the brand has pulled off a transition to a new chip architecture. This is my very first Mac that I ever owned. It's a PowerBook G4 from 2004, and it was a workhorse, even if the backlight broke several years ago. That wasn't what stopped me from using it. See, this laptop used a PowerPC chip, which Apple had been using in its machines since the mid-90s. But in 2005, the company decided that they could make faster, more efficient, and slimmer laptops with Intel processors. That famous commercial of the MacBook Air being pulled out of an envelope, that thin and light computer was made possible thanks to the partnership between Intel and Apple. But Apple's PowerPC machines and Intel machines were at odds. PowerPC chips couldn't run programs designed for Intel processors and vice versa, at least not natively. Apple tried to ease the pain by adding software that it called Rosetta, which would allow Intel Macs to play nice with PowerPC apps, but the transition was bumpy for the better part of 2 years while developers and consumers adjusted. In that transition, it meant that my PowerPC quickly became obsolete as developers stopped making PowerPC versions of apps. We're going to see more Macs with Apple's own chips, and developers are going to transition over to this new architecture over time. Apple has promised that this time will be easier, and that it has once again developed software, Rosetta 2, in macOS to make both Intel and ARM-based applications play nice across their ecosystem.
Selon CNBC, en passant des puces Intel à sa propre conception Apple Silicon M1, les derniers Macs seraient désormais beaucoup plus rapides que les versions précédentes et encore plus rapides que la plupart des PC Windows. Et le leader des fabricants de technologies pour l'apnée du sommeil, ResMed, se concentre désormais sur la fabrication de respirateurs pour les personnes atteintes de la Covid-19. L'entreprise met en place de nouveaux équipements afin d'aider les patients à respirer correctement en dehors de l'hôpital. ResMed CEO broke down how the medical equipment benefits from the emerging digital medicine space.
So, Mick, the last time we talked to each other, it was you had come up with a solution to make ventilators that were 10 times more effective than anybody else. And since then, there have been even more things that have happened that, to me, have gone your way in terms of the recognition that digital medicine is here and that you are a company that benefits immensely from digital medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. We do, Jim. And you're right. I mean, we pivoted. Last time I was on the program was in April, remember, in the midst of the crisis. And we pivoted what is just a small single-digit percentage of our business in ventilators. And we made 150,000 ventilators from January 1 through June 30. That's 350% of our normal production in that period. And we were actually 500% on our life support ventilator. We got those ventilators to hundreds of countries worldwide and saved many lives. As we're now moving forward, $35 million worth of sales on ventilators in the March quarter, $125 million of sales in the June quarter of ventilators, and then $40 million of sales in the September quarter. And we expect that to go down to de minimis here in the December quarter. And what we're doing is just what you said. We're pivoting back to our core business of sleep apnea, COPD, and asthma. And we're using what happened in this crisis. Lots of sufferings in this crisis, many people affected, but there are some blessings that come out of sufferings. I've spent more time with my family. I've stayed in one state for 200 days, got to know my wife and my children. But also at the company, we've seen the importance of digital health take off. We've seen the importance of respiratory health and respiratory hygiene take off. Just the thought of COVID impacting your lungs has made people get more masks, use their COPD and asthma medications more. And thirdly and finally, it's raised the importance of treating people outside the hospital at lower acuity, lower cost settings like their home, like home health, like hospice, skilled nursing facilities, and home medical equipment. And that's where ResMed competes, and that's where ResMed wins.
ResMed fabrique une gamme de ventilateurs pour une utilisation à domicile et à l'hôpital et aide les patients souffrant d'insuffisance respiratoire. Selon son PDG, ResMed constate 125 millions de dollars de ventes trimestrielles de ventilateurs et une fabrication d'environ 100 000 appareils en réponse à la pandémie. Le Center for Disease Control affirme que le stress pendant une épidémie peut modifier notre mode de vie. Weight Watchers change alors sa ligne directive. L'entreprise souhaite désormais une approche plus personnelle qui peut aider à réduire les mauvaises habitudes alimentaires, mais aussi l'anxiété et le manque de sommeil. Weight Watchers International launches holistic program to personalize wellness experience.
Well, what we're so excited about with the launch of My WW Plus, and by the way, it's great to be back and hope everybody's terrific, is that it really offers a complete holistic solution to a personalized and customized wellness and weight loss ecosystem across every aspect of nutrition, activity, mindset, motivation, and sleep. So it's all in one, and powered by AI and data with the utilization of an assessment. It creates a completely personalized and customized program for you. And the benefit of that is the more engaged someone is, the more successful they're going to be, because the more personalized the program is going to be. And this is the first time that we've had a significant innovation launch in a non-food innovation year. So we launched My WW last year to great success. And this is now taking it to a completely other level at a time when people are looking for a complete solution for all their health and wellness needs.
It's really, it shows how you're trying to transform the company, both from a digital perspective, but also beyond just dealing with weight loss. So how should investors think about new products like this and the difference in margins and the economics than the sort of old school Weight Watchers meetings, which is what we used to think of for the company?
Well, what we've seen through this pandemic is not a shift in our strategy. It's been an acceleration of our strategy to truly be a technology experience with what we call a human-centric overlay. And certainly community is still critical to our success and more important now than ever. But to really look at us as one, a science-based trusted brand. Two, now we can personalize and customize every aspect of wellness. What we've also seen with the acceleration of our strategy, particularly on our digital membership. So at the end of Q3, our third quarter membership of 4.7 million subscribers was a high for a Q3, but driven by digital signups, which is why you saw such a high flow through to margin at 60%. Digital members, that's an 80% margin business, and that was reflected in the performance. So it's really validating all the work that we've done over the last number of years. Also, we've been able to pivot very, very quickly in a virtual world. So actually in December, we're launching 2 new membership verticals, one called Digital 360, which is definitely geared to a millennial audience that's all about coaching, community, and on-demand content, but also built on top of the digital platform, so a higher margin vehicle. And then we're launching Digital Plus Unlimited workshops because now we have the ability to not be constricted by geography.
Weight Watchers a d'ailleurs annoncé ses résultats du 3e trimestre récemment et a terminé le trimestre avec 4,7 millions d'abonnés, un record pour la clôture du trimestre selon sa PDG Mindy Grossman. Thank you all for being with us. Merci à tous d'avoir participé à ce format 100% hybride. See you very soon for the rest of international news.